Good evening and thanks for joining us. Tonight we have breaking news on the Craig Thomson affair. The prostitute at the centre of the scandal has now changed her story and apologised to the former Labor MP. Just 2 hours ago, Victorian Fraud Squad detectives went to a lawyer's office on the Gold Coast to interview the woman who'd allegedly made damning claims against Thomson. Earlier, she spoke to our reporter Neil Dawley, who joins me now from our Brisbane newsroom. Now, Neil, this is the same woman who claimed that Craig Thomson had paid her for sex using his Health Services Union credit card. So what's she saying now?
Yeah, she spoke to police for about an hour in the car park outside her lawyer's office after confessing that she'd changed her sworn statement. Now, earlier, I spoke to her about why she changed her story and why, when she tried to put that story, and why the difficulty that she faced in trying to have that story stopped being aired publicly. Now, this woman, I must add that this woman contacted us through her solicitor, and at no stage did she ask for or receive money for what you're about to hear. Are you the woman at the centre of Channel 9's allegations that Craig Thomson used an escort at the Boardroom brothel in Sydney?
Yes.
Why did you say that you'd slept with Craig Thomson?
I believed I had at the time.
Why should we believe you now that you're telling the truth?
Because there's evidence to prove that it's not me.
And that evidence is the passport?
The passport, the fact that it was so long ago now that after thinking about it for a really long time, how can I be 100% sure it was him? I used to have a lot of clients that fitted that description. So it's just a really terrible case of mistaken identity. And it's horrible for Craig Thomson, and I feel terrible for him.
How did your dealings with Channel 9 begin?
I was called by a man named Justin Armston. I don't know how he got my number or where from. And he said he was from Current Affair. He wanted to come and talk to me. And I was obviously very curious as to why on earth a Current Affair would come looking for me. I just live a quiet life. So I met him at the beach, and he showed me a picture of a newspaper article of a picture of Craig Thomson, and he said, "Do you know this man?" And I was like, "I'm not entirely sure. He looks vaguely familiar," but he only flashed the picture at me. He wouldn't give me any information about this person. And then he said, "Did you ever work for the Boardroom escorts?" And I went, "Maybe," because I was unsure of this gentleman, of course. I'd only just met him. And then he said, "Did you work under the name of Alina?" And I went, "Oh, yes, at one stage I did." And then he said, "It's to our belief that this man was a client of yours and would like to have an interview with you."
Has he contacted you out of the blue?
Yes, completely.
Why do you think he targeted you?
I honestly couldn't tell you. I have no idea why. Why would they need to come to me when they could just look up all the records from the Boardroom escorts?
Did you tell anyone that Craig Thomson was a client of yours?
Not at the time. He wasn't anybody special back then. And in fact, at the time of Justin Armston approaching me, I had no idea of how politically driven this all was. He just told me that this gentleman had allegedly misused funds from the government, and he wanted him to go to trial for it or whatever, what have you. He didn't tell me anything about the political implications of it, that I was supposedly bringing down the government. I had no idea about that.
Was it Justin Armston who initially approached you?
Yes.
Okay. Tell us about that, and did they offer you anything up front?
Justin Armston called me later on and said he offered me $50,000 to do an interview, and that he would fly me up in the Channel 9 helicopter to Brisbane to start with. And I said, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm not interested, because my friends had been telling me that probably isn't a good idea. I'm not sure. And then his boss, Grant Williams, called me a little bit later and said, "We'll offer you 60 grand and we'll fly you down to Sydney." So I thought, okay, all right, 60 grand just to tell a story about some guy that I met ages ago. what's the harm in that?
This stems back to explosive revelations made 2 weeks ago by Channel 9's A Current Affair, when on May 23 the programme's executive producer and a reporter met with federal MP Craig Thomson in an attempt to show him an interview with an escort he'd supposedly slept with at a Sydney brothel in May 2005.
And that same former escort has also supplied us with a sworn statutory declaration in relation to your investigation.
Yeah, that's right. She provided that last week, and the implications of that are pretty obvious. This is a legal document under the Oaths Act, punishable by jail if it's found to be not true.
The inference, he'd paid for that liaison with his union credit card. It was meant to be the first smoking gun, physically linking the MP to allegations that he'd misused his health services union credit card for escorts while a union official.
This is Craig Thomson's credit card statement from when he was Health Services Union National Secretary, and it contains a transaction for $770 for a company called International Immobiliare on the 7th of May 2005.
Identity theft in Australia.
Now, Craig Thomson has consistently denied he has ever been involved in hiring prostitutes using his union credit card.
The escort at the centre of these allegations says she tried to stop this story 2 days earlier. When did you tell them that you hadn't slept with him?
On the 21st of May, but in between that time, they hadn't contacted me for a little while because they were checking their, what's the word for it, you know, they were checking all the aspects of it. Dotting the I's and crossing the T's, as Justin Armstrong called it. So I hadn't spoken to them for a little while, and then I'd looked back through my records, my passport particularly, and said, oh, I wasn't even around on these dates, because he was asking me if it was May 7th, 2005. And...
Was that the only date?
Well, that's the one that they're claiming that he charged a credit card to the Western for $770.
So on May 7, 2005, you believe you're in New Zealand?
I believe I was in New Zealand.
Have you got any records that will verify that?
I have my passport. Mm-hmm.
So can you say 100% categorically you were in New Zealand?
The only problem with that is that New Zealand doesn't stamp your passport as in and out, but according to my passport, it says that I left April and came back in June. Departed Australia in April and arrived back in Australia in June.
Okay, so you've basically contacted Channel 9 and said that you want to basically do a backflip.
Retract. I retracted everything that I said. I emailed them, I texted him, and that was after he said everything checks out, and he said send